What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with DFS bringing you a brand new video. Today's video, I'm going over Week 7's Monday Night Showdown between the Saints and Seahawks, and this one is going to be a juicy one. So the reason that I think this one's going to be a little more interesting, especially if you're on Draftkings rather than FanDuel, Draftkings, you have the defenses, so that automatically should be a couple players that you consider to play tonight. The reason being is you get the Saints offense, who hasn't been the most efficient, and you get the Seahawks offense, who with Geno Smith doesn't look terrible, but really doesn't look great either. Banged up running back core in Seattle. Alex Collins looks like cleared tonight. Rashard Penny back, as far as I know. And a lot of injuries for the Saints receiver core. And a very good Saints defense against a very bad Seattle defense. But it is Jameis Winston on the Saints, and we really haven't seen Jameis play amazing, and you won't consider that Green Bay game because he really didn't have to do much. The defense set him up a lot. So I'll go over prices on both sides, kind of compare them, and we'll talk about players you should target. And then there's a lot of value tonight. That is one good thing about tonight, guys, is there is a lot of value. So as you can see, on DraftKings, there is only 3 players above 10,000. Kamara being the most expensive, Jameis Winston, DK Metcalf, and then you get Geno Smith. If you go on FanDuel, Jameis is actually the most expensive, and then it goes Kamara, Geno, and then DK. And also Alex Collins is more expensive than Tyler Lockett, and then you get Marquez Callaway there. You look at it, Lockett is more expensive on DraftKings, and then you get Callaway, and then Collins down there. So first off the bat, Kamara looks like the only player tonight on paper to have a great game. The reason being, Seattle is terrible against the run. They're terrible against the pass too. But with his usage, I mean, we can look at his carries, and he gets a lot of carries. So he's somebody, the most expensive guy on the slate on DraftKings. On FanDuel, second most expensive. But with how much the Saints run the ball, if this game does end up being the way it looks on paper, both defenses are very good on third down. Both defenses are very good in the red zone, which means you potentially see a game that goes to the under, which a lot of people are predicting, especially with the weather. So Kamara, if it's anything like last night's game between the Colts and 49ers, to where it was very hard to pass, and both quarterbacks not the most efficient passing. Wentz looked good, but anyway, back to the point. Kamara 12.8, and then on FanDuel 16,000. Definitely somebody you guys should target. And his teammate Jameis Winston, I think Jameis, we could see a good game out of Jameis. So his passing prop, I believe, is just over 200 yards. We've seen him throw for over 200 yards in the last 2 games. But his passing attempts is, pretty consistent, except for last week against Washington, where he threw 30 passes. But his completion percentage was, pretty consistent for the most part there, around 60 to 70. He's had 2 weeks at 50. But with his receiver core banged up, it's questioning who he's going to throw the ball to. Jameis hasn't looked terrible, but like I said, he hasn't looked great. He threw 5 touchdowns against Green Bay, 4 touchdowns against Washington. The other 3 games, he combines for 3 touchdowns against at what was a good Carolina defense and a good New England defense. And then the Giants, they ran the ball a lot. But that does question of how much this weather is going to impact the game and the weapons that Winston has. There's only one defensive back or corner to worry about tonight on the side of Seattle, and that's Reed. He's the only one that's looked good so far. Injuries there do play a factor. So you're looking at Marquez Callaway probably being the number 1 receiver for New Orleans. but he doesn't have the greatest matchup because he's going to see the most of Reed. But that doesn't mean he's going to see Reed all game. So there is opportunity there. DK Metcalf actually does have the best advantage. So we can look at him on both sites. 13.5 and 10,000 on DraftKings. Does have the best. I won't say best. But if I were to pick a Seattle receiver tonight, DK Metcalf's going to see less of Lattimore than Lockett is. Lockett's actually going to see a lot more of him. So DK Metcalf is probably the receiver you want to go to on the Seattle side, and especially since Geno's been in. DK's been his guy. You look at Tyler Lockett's numbers too. 7 and 10, but he's missed him quite a bit. This isn't Tyler Lockett not catching the ball. If you watched the game last week, there was plenty of times to where Geno Smith just missed Lockett. That's all it was. Either an underthrow or just a bad pass in general. But him with DK Metcalf and the fact that Tyler Lockett's going to see more Marshawn Lattimore than DK. DK is probably the more preferred wide receiver. Geno Smith at 9,400. I'm going to lean towards Jameis in this matchup just because he's got a way easier defense to play. And you look at Geno Smith's numbers. Granted, his numbers don't entail the story of how well he's played for Seattle. Granted, both games were close. Both defenses, you're looking at the Rams defense, very good defense. Pittsburgh defense, very good defense. Hasn't been the greatest, but very good too. And now you're facing the Saints. He hasn't. You look at his numbers; they're right there, 10 and 11, pretty close to each other. You look at the different stats too. He's only thrown 2 touchdowns in the 2 games. Like I said, another rough matchup for him here. If you're going to take a quarterback tonight, you lean towards Winston. Better matchup. Like I said, the weather will play an impact, so you do have to watch the weather. But if you are playing a quarterback, I recommend Jameis Winston. Most expensive on FanDuel. And yeah, like I said, Marquez Callaway is probably the one guy you're going to want to get to on the New Orleans receiver side. And he is the most expensive New Orleans receiver. Like I said, there is value here tonight. Don't freak out if you end up getting your lineup. You're like, well, obviously I want Kamara. Obviously I want Jameis. And I want DK. Let's just put that in there. You could still have a great lineup tonight with those 3 players in your lineup. So, just going down, we'll keep looking at people and explain why. So Alex Collins, 7,400 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, 12,000. Way too expensive on FanDuel to play. And in my opinion, a little too expensive on DraftKings as well. He was 50-50 basically up until this morning. Now it appears that he is going to play. But that's a question mark that you risk. One, you're playing a top 3. It's always hard to say between them and Tampa Bay. So we'll say top 3 rush defense. One of the best defenses in the league right now. Haven't faced the greatest opponents, granted, but their defenses still look really good. And you're taking a risk paying up for Alex Collins at 7,400 with DJ Dallas, Rashard Penny, all those guys just waiting there. So that is a risk you take. Look, and the FanDuel doesn't do defenses, so that's why I recommend on a night like tonight, if you don't want to worry about the Saints defense, you switch over to FanDuel. Now, you can still play the Saints defense and have a very good line, but that's one more aspect of the game that you have to worry about if you're playing on DraftKings is what are the Saints defense going to do? So you look at the Saints defenses of fantasy points. Sorry about that. Look at their fantasy points. You saw them score 15 points against Green Bay, 20 points against New England, 6 points against Washington and Carolina, and 2 points against the Giants. Now, this doesn't say what may or may not happen, but in a rainy game, and if it is rainy, if it is windy, anything like last night's game, and you're not going to throw for over 200 yards, you're going to have to run the ball against the Saints defense. That's not promising. So the Saints defense has an advantage if the weather is bad. So that's a factor you have to play. With that, Like I said, you have DJ Dallas there that you have to worry about with playing someone like Alex Collins. So you go down, DJ Dallas there, kind of in the same price point. Next is kickers. So with Will Lutz being on the IR, it appears Brian Johnson is going to be their kicker. I don't know how well he is going to do. So, yet again, another risk that you take. And Jason Myers there for Seattle at 6K. Johnson should definitely be someone you look at. And the same for Myers. Just because of how good both red zone defenses are. Those are guys that you should definitely target. The reason I like Brian Johnson more, and yet again, we haven't seen him kick. So you're taking a huge risk there playing a kicker in bad weather too. I mean, the kickers last night did amazing in that weather. But Seattle's red zone defense has actually been really good. Seattle allows the most yards per drive, which is interesting. And if New Orleans can be efficient, he could definitely get you 10 plus fantasy points tonight. Gerald Everett is definitely not someone I'm looking at with how much they go with other tight ends. I mean, you saw Will Dissly get the touchdown last week against Pittsburgh, and you look at Gerald Everett, and it's very rough. With Geno Smith only throwing for no more than 250 yards, it's very hard to get that volume, get anything there for the tight ends. So we go and look. You get the kickers there, 85, 85. Travis Homer is actually there. You see Will Dissly is more expensive than Gerald Everett on FanDuel. You see Juwan Johnson, Ty Montgomery, Freddie Swain. And the prices are way different on DraftKings. Homer's there. You get Juwan Johnson there, Freddie Swain. So let's talk about values for tonight. So remember, I said you could still have a good lineup with Kamara, Winston, and Metcalf in your lineup, the three key guys on DraftKings. So here's where the value comes in. So you do have Rashard Penny, so is able to play, but Alex Collins is active. So someone maybe you don't want to play. So you get Juwan Johnson, who has been used in a versatile role of both receiver, tight end. And you look at his fantasy points, nothing really stands out. With Harris being out tonight, he's somebody you probably should consider to play at 2,200. If you're doing quite a few lines, you probably want to have him in some lines, as well as Troutman. Troutman, just recently coming back to the team, he's getting healthier. Was hurt, didn't know what to expect. Got the 2 targets, 1-1. So it's nothing that you should go, man, I have to play him. But definitely a cheap option there at tight end. On FanDuel, I know I just saw him. Troutman there at 5,500. So the minimum on FanDuel, so you can see if you can go down everywhere, is 5,000. That is the minimum. On DraftKings, it's really not a minimum, but he's there at 1,800. Juwan Johnson at 2,200. Now I want to talk about Freddie Swain. So the reason that I think Freddie Swain is definitely someone you should consider tonight is because he honestly has the best matchup. Now, with the volume he gets, the targets he gets, he's not somebody you should really go, I need him in my lineup. But he is a value play there at 2,000, getting the best matchup as far as who he's going to see defensively lining up in the slot. So, I mean, he's been pretty consistent with Geno Smith, 3 targets, but his yards, -4 and 9, not promising at all. And it's, like I said, it's a big risk you're taking anybody from Seattle's offense. Now, on the New Orleans side, we can look. Kenny Stills is 1,600. The reason this is interesting, he gets in versus Washington, gets 5 targets, 17 yards. So, not somebody, yet again, this is all value. This is not anybody that you should be looking that is 100% going to win you the millie. But if you're playing a lot of lines and you need to find value, these are the guys you want to get. So, Freddie Swain, 6,000 on FanDuel. Kenny Stills 5,500 value plays. So guys that Kenny Stills, we've seen what he's done previously with Miami, with the Texans. He's not terrible, but he's not great either. But he is a value play and definitely someone you should look at 1,600. Except Reed is the only one that you got to worry about on Seattle side. Kenny Stills is going to see a little of them, but the majority, Marquise Callaway is going to see the most. And then Ty Montgomery at 2,100, 800, is going to line up in the slot for the Saints, and he has the best matchup of all three receivers on New Orleans. Ty Montgomery has the best matchup if he is truly lining up in the slot. At 800, that's value. That's what you want as value. You go on FanDuel, and I believe he is actually more. And on FanDuel, they actually have him priced a little more than the rest of the value plays. So 6,500, Ty Montgomery's there. So let's go back and let's say I like Kenny Stills at 1,600. That opens it up a little more. And then let's just go the Saints defense. We have 1,600. We talked about who we like, and let's throw Ty Montgomery in there. It's a very heavy Seattle or New Orleans, so let's take the defense away. Let's go the kicker. Let's put him in there, 3,600. And you could still go Juwan Johnson, Freddie Swain, Troutman. You get a lot more value. So you could have the three, in my opinion, guys that you should worry about the most as far as getting those fantasy points, or had the highest ceiling for fantasy points of Kamara, Winston, and Metcalf. And then you get value, and you could get a kicker or the defense in there as well. So definitely some options you look at. FanDuel, let's do the same thing. So let's put Kamara in here. Let's put Jameis. Let's put DK. So we have an average of 7,000 to mess around with. We'll do the same thing. We'll put Kenny Stills in there. We get 8,500. So a little more wiggle room for our last guy, and we can put a kicker in there. So that's definitely an option that you guys should consider is the value. There's quite a few value plays. You just can't expect 10 plus fantasy points from any of them. If they get you 10, you should be entirely grateful because that allows you for those three guys to do what they need to do, but you're also taking a risk of them just hitting a donut. So those are guys that have an opportunity tonight to get fantasy points, and with the game script, you might not see them get any. It just all depends. I'm favorited towards New Orleans tonight, guys. If you're on the betting, also consider the under for tonight as well. So definitely some bets you guys should consider. If you guys are interested, I will link our Discord in the description down below for our full plays, and we also do bets and props and so on and so on. We also do NBA as well. So if you guys are playing the NBA, definitely check us out. I don't think you will be disappointed. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.